Ludwig, under the table is some lion poo.
Here? Feathers these are, not poo.
That's a poo.
What?
Really, every time you do this, I have to explain. You need to learn.
Only Slavics would think this is poo.
I really think Slavics would get that that was poo.
Put this in your pocket. I need to tell you something about today's special events.
Any understanding I have of your special events, lost. Completely lost.
Hugo Gorbachev is going to be here.
That loser!
Please, bite your tongue when we need to impress him. This place is going under. Can't you hear even my voice? Accent's going under.
But I don't think he's gonna enjoy this circus.
Please, only the most famous and elite people can enjoy our circus. It's not for the everyman.
Any Tom, Dick, or Harry will enjoy this place.
Right. Now, no losers. We need to do that. We need to borrow the doors from any losers. Blue-collar types.
Fresh red meat for the lions. That's the only reason they're here.
Radiation and poison for all the losers.
Any clowns tonight?
This house is not friendly to clowns. We are a lion circus.
Pravda and all that.
Understand. We need to make some changes, or else it's going under. I think I told you this already.
No pool for me.
Putin! You!
Maurice! You have come to see me?
Come, Melly. I want to show you magic trick.
But keep away, you know how your magic tricks make me feel.
Come, Fiona. I want to show you all my magic tricks in front of this cloud.
Every secret has its time. You must show me when we are alone, not in front of all the watchers.
Feel my hands. They're magical.
Magical dust. I think, oh no, this is disgusting. This is dead skin.
No! Oh my God! My skin is hand is falling apart like a horrible holy palmer.
Oh, let's rinse it off you.
Rinse, Fiona, rinse.
Oh, yes.
Next. The point is, Tess is going to have to talk about this topic, but our players behind us will help her by creating scenes which she'll have to explain.
So our question, and I thank you very much for being here, ladies and gentlemen, is: does Dolly Parton sleep on her back? Now, Dolly, as one of America's sweethearts, one of the crowning glories of country music, she has such a wonderful voice, and I think many people must wonder, how does she maintain that wonderful voice and that, just the breath, the depth of breath. So we have a few slides here tonight to help me divulge into this subject. So let's view our first slide now. As you can see here, this is Dolly as a young girl. She has just reached maturity and is realizing her voice is coming into her own. And she's actually being picked up by this big shot record producer in LA with his lovely ladies on his arm. Dolly soon to be one of the ladies on his arm. Although, he has this face, this solemn face that forebodes times to come. I mean, right here you can see Dolly's mother looking admiringly at her daughter who is coming into such a fruitful age. Now Dolly's early childhood, of course, was a troubled one. She had many family occurrences, family issues with her many siblings. I think she had 8 siblings, not all of which are on record in Wikipedia. But of her 8 siblings, I'm just going to tell you about a couple of them now. So as we go to our second slide, so this is Dolly's sister, Imelda. Now Imelda was, as you can see, as endowed as Dolly was, as were all of the female Partons, but Imelda had some very difficult childhood traumas to do with the lamps. She always had to be attached to a lampshade. She later went on to pioneer the lampshade hat. As you can see here now, the family dog is here in the scene as well. We have Dolly's father here grieving the sad loss of her grandfather. Her brother taking absolutely no notice whatsoever. And over here, you can see Dolly's second cousin, who actually went on to become one of the most famous strippers in America, patenting the very famous bending butt move that you now see so frequently in music videos. And I mean, this is just an homage, ladies and gentlemen, to one of the dead Partons, the founder of the Parton name, Mr. Everest Parton, who pioneered this lovely jumper, all that remains hanging in their now burnt-out house. As the Partons went on to reach varying levels of fame, Dolly rose and really shone as a beacon, as a pioneering light of America. She went through many different employment opportunities before reaching her singing career, a few of which I'll show you in this next slide. So, number 1, over here you have Dolly as a face model. Her face was moulded and was actually used to practice beautician school treatments on, which is why it is so fixed in one place. It's not modern cosmetic surgery, it is actually from her days as a face model. Here you can see this was Dolly's phase of going through drag. She was really trying not to parody, but to capture the essence of man, which she had a significant breast reduction for, which actually hindered her in her later breast eruptions, shall we say, eruptions. And this, as we can see here, the beauty of Dolly clutching onto her idol, her absolute idol, the founder of Facebook, whose name I now cannot remember. But she pioneered the first face on Facebook, and this is her clutching him in his success. And here we see Dolly's phase as a jazz speakeasy singer, when she would just continuously blow the smoke. She was not singing at this time, she would provide the visual effects for the venue that she was frequenting. But that was actually how her career started. She started singing small little ditties as she stood by the side, blowing haze into a lovely underground room full of mysterious individuals, some of those individuals that helped spark her future career. And now we'll see a quick flash through of some of the things that inspired her songs. So on this next slide. Here we have a torrid love affair that Dolly actually ended up breaking up with this majestic man, Mark Lamont, who is clutching Dolly's ample bosom right here, leaving this poor woman, Leslie, devastated. This was a very trying time in Dolly's life, but actually was one of great love and admiration. And over here you can see Dolly being worshipped by her followers, proclaimed as an idol of American music, fame and glory. She has everything she could ever want, and this has actually inspired a lot of her songs, her success and her fame and her reaching for that status symbol. So now in our final slide, we just want to have a look at one of Dolly's most incredible moments on the American stage. This was actually taken from her 1996 tour, in which she staged a tremendous production, singing her famous song, Coat of Many Colours, in this beautiful stage setting. The Coat of Many Colours actually took place in her old family home, recreated on stage for a cost of $5 million. Here she is, sat in a throne, wearing her coat of many colours as she is adorned by her family and siblings. Over here, we see Uncle Gerald, who always likes to climb things in the house. And here we see her father, lying on the floor, emanating the womanhood of birth and the childbearing element of Dolly. And here, the dog, still growling on the floor, ready to receive Dolly as his one true owner. And so I feel like we have really seen an insight into Dolly's life here. Sadly, the shotgun that was used in this production was the one that killed her only days ago. And it's a terrible, terrible loss, but I think that's why we're all gathered here today. So, I mean, if we could all just say a lovely little prayer for Dolly, if you'd like to repeat after me. Dolly!
Dolly!
We worship you.
We worship you.
And your light.
And your light.
Amen.
Amen.
We are going to play one last game for tonight, and we are going to play a game called Perpetual Motion. So, can we have Alex, John, and Caitlin, please? Now, our three players are going to do a wonderful scene for you. A scene involving a chair. The chair is actually quite important because in this scene, at any one time, one person must be standing, one person must be sitting, and one person must be lying down. And they'll have to kind of compensate for each other's athletics ability. So, let's have a location for this scene. Where's our three players in the scene?
Funeral home.
Something home?
Funeral.
Funeral home. I like that. In Slough. In your own time.
I don't think that box is big enough for you, Jane.
Is this run through done yet? It's really creepy.
I like the fact I can see you in a box.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like it in here. I was really kind of planning to be here a lot longer. I mean,
We can make you there a lot longer if you want. We can
no,
make that
no, anything, but please don't put me back in that box.
It's kind of nice. I mean, it's kind of nice. I mean, I obviously don't fit.
I mean, no, you absolutely don't fit. We're definitely gonna have to expand this thing. I mean, maybe we could just... Oh. Oh, God.
I'm wearing my dad's kilt.
Oh, I wasn't ready for that.
What do you mean you weren't ready for it?
It just shocked me. It shocked me.
I know
Okay.
I know it shocked you, but it's a shocking sight. I know. It's horrific down there.
It absolutely is. There's just too many coffins to lay in. And this one's oddly comfortable, actually.
But you know what you could do? We could get Terry in there. Terry.
What?
Terry, can we put you in the coffin, mate?
I'm on my break.
Yeah, that'd be perfect, mate. Right. Shove it. There we go. Right, okay. So, I'm thinking if we go lengthways, just sit down there. If we go lengthways, and widthways, he's round, so he's the right size.
Right.
What do you mean?
He's a little round. I'm gonna stay safe down here in this here coffin.
What do you mean I'm round? You lay down.
Guys,
Yeah?
funeral homes
I want to go in the coffin.
and coffins are really nothing to joke about.
Yeah.
Okay? Sales are down this month.
What? Why?
Somebody has to step up. All right?
Well,
What did I just say about laughter?
No laughter.
I think they're kidding again.
Fuck's sake.
No kidding?
No killing?
Oh man.
No, absolutely not. You know what happened last time you went killing.
I got away with it!
No, actually, if you go killing, that means more sales.
And nobody will get hurt.
Fucking kill everybody!
Yeah.
Sounds like a great time! We'll all
Yeah,
just hang
kill
out in the
everyone.
coffins.
Let's kill everyone. You got an ice pack? I think we could cool down the stream. Why are you laughing at me?
I can't help it. You kind of limping for some reason.
I'm limping out of love.
At the top of my head, I've got no idea what it was.
Top of your head?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. I think, put me in a coffin and kill me.
Science!
Dave, so yeah, I'm Liam. I'm a computational biologist. And it's my job to tell you this evening that although you were born alone, you're not going to die alone. Because each one of you carries with you millions and millions of bacteria that live inside your gut. So they weren't there when you were born. You were born completely sterile until, as you passed out of the womb, through your mother's vagina, you were slathered with a whole load of mucus and other sort of stuff. And those bacteria in that initial mucus started to colonize your body and made a nice home there. So I do research into the human microbiome, which is the name that we give to all of those bacteria that collectively live in our bodies. And the term the human microbiome make it sound like there's just a sort of assemblage of bacteria that live in every place in our body. That's not true. It's very, very structured. So the bacteria that live in your gut, for example, completely different to the bacteria that live in your mouth, completely different to the ones that live in your armpit. So there are whole fields of research dedicated to each of those microbiomes. So some people will study the vaginal microbiome, some people will study the oral microbiome, some people study the gut microbiome. It's really a whole disgusting world. I do work on that now with DNA sequencing to kind of work out which bacteria are there. But the history of microbiome research actually goes back quite far. So the first observation of bacteria in the human body is from 1673, and a Dutch guy called Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, who lived in Delft and was not what we would think of as a scientist. So he was a draper, so he had a fabric shop basically. So he was like, I don't know, Philip Green or something like that. And he, in his spare time, made microscopes. So people aren't sure why he started making microscopes. Probably initially he was interested in looking at fabrics. So in Holland at the time, they would have lots of varied fabrics from all over the world, and they'd want to look at the thread of those fabrics and examine them very, very closely. So he made these meticulous microscopes out of beads of glass. So they're very, very different to what we think of as microscopes now, where you look down into something. He would have a tiny piece of metal with a grain of glass in it, and a little stick, a pin that he would put samples on, and then hold them up to the light and just sort of squint and look at what he could see in the glass as it refracted and went onto his own eye. And through that, he would look at loads and loads of stuff. So he basically, everything imaginable you could scrape and look at, he did. And one of the things that he looked at was actually his own sperm. So, he was interested in the debate about reproduction and how life is generated. So he managed to collect some of his own semen, but in his letter to the Royal Society, where he's describing this, he wants to make it very clear that he didn't collect it through anything immoral. He was making love to his wife, and then just after he finished, he really quickly got some sperm.
Get it while it's hot.
Exactly. Put it on there and looked and didn't really see anything because sperm are actually too small to see. But he thought that he might see little men or something like that. And that was one of the theories about reproduction, that sort of seeds resembled kind of homunculi and they would then generate into a whole person. Another thing that he looked at, which is more interesting for my research, is stuff from his teeth. So he was interested in his own oral hygiene. So in the letter where he's describing these observations from 1673 to the Royal Society, he describes how he cleans his teeth every day. And they didn't have toothbrushes back then. Toothbrushes are actually kind of a 19th century invention. So what he did was he'd rub salt on his teeth and gums, and then he'd wipe them with a cloth. And he'd also make sure that he drank spirits after he'd drank things like coffee to try and clean his mouth out because he was worried about his hygiene. But he found that even though he did that, and he could find this what he called a white batter in between his teeth. So this is what we now call plaque. So when you go to the dentist, that kind of stuff that builds up and calcifies and the dentist zzz off with a little machine. that's plaque. And he was amazed that he took this white material, scraped it off his teeth, mixed it with rainwater that he'd previously looked at and found that there was nothing in, so he knew it was pure. And he observed little animals moving around within this stuff. So he called them animalcules. That's the kind of translation of the Dutch word that he used. And he didn't know what they were, but he said, yeah, there are little animals that live in our mouths. And he was fascinated by this because he thought, you know, are they the same in every person? So he went and he found what he described as an old man with really horrible teeth who drank lots of liquor and you know, had bad oral hygiene. And he was amazed that the sorts of animals that he saw, so some of them were round, some of them were long and thin, some of them swam in particular ways. He could see the same ones in this old guy's batter that he'd scraped from his teeth. And he showed these little animals in his specimens to two gentlewomen who lived in his house, probably his wife and his daughter. And they were horrified at seeing these little animals. And he said, well, what if one were to tell these people that actually there are more animals in one's mouth than there are men in an entire kingdom? So actually each of us carries with us an amazing diversity of little animals that live inside us. So flash forward 350 years to the present day, we don't use little microscopes to look at human microbiome. We use DNA sequencing. But the principle is still the same. So, like Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, we'll scrape stuff off people's teeth, for example, and then we'll sequence all the DNA that's present in that. And so the DNA is the genetic material of the bacteria that are there. And what you can do is you can look for specific genes that are universal to all bacteria. So no matter what species of bacteria is there, it will have this gene, but it will be a little bit different between the different bacteria. So that's like a barcode for the bacteria. If you can look at this types of that gene that are present, you can work out which species of bacteria are there. And from that, we now know that we have hundreds of different species of bacteria that live in our mouths. And also, each person has quite a unique, what we call an oral microbiome fingerprint. So the bacteria that are in your mouth and the person sitting next to you are going to be different. If you're a romantic partner with that person and you exchange bacteria with them by making out, then that will be more similar for a few hours after you make out with each other, but it tends to die away and you return to your own stable fingerprint of bacteria. So I do research into that, and there's a lot of interest in what are the factors that shape that diversity of bacteria. Why do some people have particular arrangements of bacteria and other people have others? And what it looks like is that it's actually that initial early environment, the first few years of growing up, that shape the composition of your oral microbiome and keep it persistent throughout your life. So if you take antibiotics, for example, there'll be variation, lots of bacteria will be depleted and lots of species will be killed off, but they'll come back and you'll retain that sort of stable characteristic. And the reason we know this is, I'll describe one study that I was involved in. So we had a large extended family of about 120 people. And we had their family tree, so we knew that they were all genetically quite closely related to each other. And we also knew which households they lived in, so because you tend to live with, you know, your close family members. And we had saliva samples of all of those people, which meant that we could both work out their human genetics, so how distant two people were based on their human genes, and their bacterial genetics, how distant they were based on the bacteria that were present in their saliva. And then we could work out what was the different contribution of living in the same house as somebody, being very closely genetically related to them, the age that you are, your gender as well. And the results of that combined analysis showed that household is actually by far and away the most important factor. So it's not that your human genetics is selecting for particular bacteria in your mouth at least, it's actually the environment. So you're taking stuff in from your environment and that shapes your oral microbiome. Another thing that I'm really interested in is antibiotic resistance. So I mentioned antibiotics earlier. So every time that you take antibiotics, that exerts a selective pressure on the bacteria in your mouth, in your whole body, to develop resistance to those antibiotics. And what's amazing about bacterial genetics, which is completely unlike human genetics, is that for humans, if we want to exchange genes with somebody else, we need to have sex and make a new person with different genes. Bacteria don't have to do that. they reproduce by dividing their cells, so they get all of the same genetic material from their parents, so one cell splits into two, they have identical genetic material. But they can also swap genes completely freely with each other. So they can pick up a piece of DNA from the environment, take it into themselves and incorporate it into their genome amazingly quickly. And that means, that's why antibiotic resistance is such a concern, because it means that once a gene for antibiotic resistance has developed, it can then spread really quickly through bacteria. So if an antibiotic is being used a lot, there's a massive selective pressure for bacteria to pick up that gene from their environment. And this is a concern because it means that even if a gene arises somewhere, say, I don't know, in China, where there's a lot of antibiotic use in agriculture, global trade routes mean that incredibly quickly we can find it in the UK. And one study that I was involved in, we looked at a resistance gene that conferred resistance to an antibiotic called colistin. Now, colistin is a really old antibiotic that was discovered in the 1950s and basically is no longer used in most people because it's incredibly toxic to people as well. So it's a really bad antibiotic. Unfortunately, we have better antibiotics, and so we've been using them. The problem is, because we've been using them, there's now lots of resistance to those. So people can get infections where they're resistant to essentially all antibiotics except the really crap old stuff like colistin, and then they have to receive colistin. So colistin really is one of our last lines of defense against particular sorts of drug-resistant bacteria. The problem is that resistance to colistin has now arisen because colistin is used quite widely in agriculture and stuff like that. So in late 2015, some Chinese researchers reported that they'd seen a particular gene that gave resistance to colistin in some agricultural isolates. So they'd taken a sample from a pig and they'd found that an E. coli in that pig had this resistance gene. Then lots of other research groups around the world, now that they knew the sequence of that gene, started going into their freezers and looking at the samples from various places that they had and sequencing them and seeing if they could find the gene. What they found was, within a few months, over 30 different countries reported that this gene was actually present. So what we wanted to do was look at all of those samples together and work out the evolutionary history of that gene. So where had that gene actually come from and when had it arisen? Because colistin, was developed in the 1950s, but had the gene emerged in the 1950s and just been quite quiet for a long time because there wasn't a selective pressure because colistin wasn't being used, and then risen up recently, or had it only arisen very recently? And what we were able to do is, by looking at the genetic sequences, by assembling all the DNA and looking at that gene and making a family tree of that gene, we could show that the best estimate for when this colistin resistance gene had been first originated was in about 2002, so somewhere between 2002 and 2006. So actually incredibly recent in sort of evolutionary timescales, but already that gene is found in Dutch backpackers who go to Southeast Asia and come back to the Netherlands. So it's been found in feces from those people. It's also been found in places in our data set. For this work, I basically looked at all publicly available samples and found whether this gene was present or not. And the samples we had in that data set were from such a range of places. So we had things like poo from the Dutch backpackers, we had hospital samples from the UK, we had lots of stuff from, pigs and cows in agriculture, but we also had things like a penguin from Brazil. And I was looking at, when that came up, I was like, what? There must be a mistake, this is wrong. But then I went and found there is a paper where people report that they found this penguin, a Magellanic penguin, that had an E. coli that had resistance to colistin in a secretion from its foot. And I was like, what? Why would you just sample a penguin's foot secretion? So it turns out that penguins, quite often, if they're kept in zoos and stuff, they get a thing called, they get abraded their feet on the sort of concrete, and they get a condition called bumblefoot, which sounds really cute, but actually means they get bacterial infections on their feet, and that's why there's kind of a veterinary interest in sampling these things. But these researchers have found, they've just been doing some routine sampling, and they found that this, incredibly recent gene that confers resistance to a last resort antibiotic was present on this penguin's foot. So it's those kind of amazing links between things worldwide and the genes that we all carry within us with those little animals that I find really fascinating. So yeah, if you're interested in that, please do ask me some questions afterwards. I'd love to talk to you about it, and thank you very much.
That was amazing. I get a sense that the troupe have got a little bit of inspiration there. A few things might have come out that they could use. Bumblefoot, some good shit from Dutch backpackers, and what was it? You know, looking at your private parts through a lens, which I think is as old as.
Speak for
time.
yourself.
Anyway, yeah. Over to the troupe now to make with that what you will.
Yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad, man.
Are you? Your feet are looking weird.
What? It's because of the dance I do.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, you're the supreme tap dancer of our generation, but I mean, they even for that they look freaky. I mean, you should get that looked at. There.
What are you saying?
That one.
What are you saying?
I mean, I'm not. Whoa, man! You don't have to tap everywhere.
Yes, I do. I'm a penguin. I've seen the film. What do you want?
Okay, what will I have? I don't like the sea salt. I would like just the ordinary salt. I need to, wash my teeth.
Oh, they've been ordered, so yeah.
And do you have some cloth as well?
Yeah, I've got cloth there. Do you want chloroform on it or not?
No, but I think that's a bit dirty, don't it?
Well, it's got chloroform on it, here.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you said
I have
no,
another
you
one.
can't.
Have you used that? It kind of smells. Oh, it stinks. No, the other one, please. The new one. There you go. Thank you very much. Yes.
That'll be £10, please.
£10?
£10.
£10?
I like £10 tonight.
Actually, I don't have much money at all.
Ah, but you'll have lovely, lovely salty mouths.
Salty mouth would be beautiful. Actually,
Next!
My mum has been complaining.
Why, your mum got a salty mouth?
Did you know, right? If you tell someone you're a scientist,
Yeah.
you can drink in the mornings.
Every morning?
Every morning you have your coffee, yeah, and then you just hit the spirits.
So my mom said I have the spirit of a lion.
No, like Jack Daniels or vodka.
Yeah, I've met them.
Do you want a coffee?
Can you believe that we're doctors?
I know. I love the NHS.
Welcome to Anthony's fabric store. Would you like anything today?
Well, I just.
Are you looking for a lovely silk? We have silk.
I just. I heard there was some microscopes to be.
Oh. You just
I mean, just like words on.
Oh yes, well I'll take you to this interesting fabric way over here. This special fabric. No, okay. Did you bring your sample?
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah. And it was made through love, yes?
It was made
No.
through. I mean, there was a lot of alcohol involved, so I want to think that there's love and like there might be some feelings, but like I can't.
Babe, that was hummus. It's this one.
You're mixing your hummus and your samples?
I didn't mean to mix the hummus. I mean,
Well, are you sure this is even a sample?
I love
taste
hummus
some.
as much as
If it
it
tastes like hummus, it is not your sample.
Thank you.
What's the hummus recipe? You have to tell me your secret.
All right. Germs, step up. It's time to get your rolls for the day. Come around.
Okay.
All right, so Dave's been picking this scab on the inside of his leg.
Shotgun!
No! Duplicate yourself and head on out. Good job. All right, now, don't complain. Hey, tell her not to complain.
No.
All right, now, yous, over here. You're the new guy, aren't you?
Yeah,
All right, now.
came over.
You came over from China, wasn't it?
Apparently.
Shit, isn't that amazing?
I know.
Now, what can we do to fuck up this guy's liver? That's what I've been thinking.
Let's put shit in it.
Shit,
Like crack cocaine.
cocaine. You're on cocaine duty. Who's gonna
Fuck
follow this
yeah.
guy?
Oh man, I'll go with cocaine.
All right. That's it. No more jobs for today. You guys gotta come back tomorrow. That's the spirit. Wow, that was a long walk.
That was tough.
Oh God, I need to eat something.
I didn't think China was gonna be so big.
It is massive, absolutely massive, and the food is amazing. You know.
Well, the feces is not great, but
No. Well, I had to stop. I'm sorry about that. I had to stop every 10 minutes.
Oh.
It's been rough. Yeah.
Let's see, where are we?
Well, in the mountain range. 200 miles from Shanghai.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Isn't that where we are?
well,
No, that's north, right?
do I need to phone home?
Home?
No, we shouldn't.
No, we shouldn't.
No.
We're grown up. We're grown ups.
Yeah.
We are not going to call our
No.
parents.
Whatever happens, we're not going to go back to the Netherlands.
We are brothers.
Okay, so if you just open wide for me. Yeah, that's great. Oh wow, you have a lot of plaque. I mean, it's just all gathered. Do you mind if I just scrape that off for you? Is that okay? Let me just get. That's wonderful. You get to draw now. Let's just lean back, stick your tongue out. There we go. Oh, wonderful. I'm just gonna part your lips. If you this is awesome! He got me!
Blood.
Oh God!
Is that you good? Is that you good, boy?
Is that helipad? Is that helipad? Is that helipad? What the fuck is that?
Bring in the big guns. Go on, son. Go on.
Oh.
Right, okay. Have you got a machine gun?
Yeah. Machine gun?
Yeah, sir. Oh, yes, yeah. We're going to attack the antibiotics.
I only brought my jeans with me. It's supposed to be resistant.
Yeah, come at me.
Oh, right, okay.
It's supposed to be.
It is good, is it?
Right now.
Oh!
Do you feel it?
Oh, I'm getting strong.
Oh.
Oh, I don't need a machine gun.
No, you don't.
No.
With that gene, we can take over the world. We can multiply.
Oh, yes. Let's multiply.
We need to find someone else to give the gene to.
Who wants to multiply? No.
Honey, I said I want you to bring me the cigarettes. I didn't want you to smoke them all.
Sorry about that. I got a little caught up listening to this conversation.
You don't smell so good.
So, did you get the bag of food? Come on. Oh, yeah.
Still warm.
Oh, yeah. You got the good shit.
So, it is I, Dr. Leeuwenhoek, Anthony Leeuwenhoek, I think was his name. Now, no one has believed that there are little people inside your mouth, but I must tell you, they're there. And I'm glad someone has come to finally
I was just.
learn. Oh, were you not here to learn about...
I was just wondering if you hemmed my pants yet. I brought them in 3 days ago.
No, they're lovely chords. Yeah, you can have them back, but I thought maybe I could tell you about some of the things I've been studying.
Yeah, sure, go ahead, but I'm still waiting for pants. I've been walking around with no pants on.
You see, on this lovely pair of chords, you have the pleats of chord. Can you hold this side, please?
Yeah, sorry.
As you see, Leeuwenhoek is a
The
little...
hook for the hand.
You have the pleats. You have the pleats. Oh, sorry, I stretched them. You have the pleats, of course. But, pleats aside, do you mind opening your mouth?
I don't understand why I have to do a chord.
Yeah. Oh, it's in there. It's in there. I got him! I got the little guy!
Hello.
Hey.
I'm Simon Sturm.
I
It's
don't
alright.
know if I'm ready to make this commitment
It's alright,
as much as yet. I mean, we might multiply.
We're gonna have a race soon.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, competition, eyes on the prize.
Eyes in the prize.
Eyes
I'm gonna
on
get
the
that.
prize.
I'm gonna
No,
get
you're
that.
not.
I'm gonna get that.
You think
Go!
Ah! No! Stop! You have so many genes in you! Oh my lord, you having a seizure! No! Don't listen to the bad genes!
So the sound is on, right? Like, it's been like 48 hours. That's like enough time for him to like text back. You know, like even just like a hey, or like last night was fun, or like a do you want to go for hummus? Just anything. No, Mom, I'm gonna be late. Yes, Mom, Kevin was the best looking Backstreet Boy.
Hey. It's me.
Peter,
Hey, baby.
how many times do I have to ask you not to sneak up?
One more.
Please, don't sneak up on me like that, okay? Mom! Peter's sneaking up on me again!
Ooh, Peter's sneaking up on me again. Mom!
What?
What? No,
You wanna know something? I fucked a dude right where you're standing last night.
Oh!
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? And he hasn't even texted me
Was
back
he
yet.
cute?
Huh?
Was he cute?
He's super freaking cute.
Oh!
I like him a lot.
Oh!
We shared hummus together.
Oh! Wow!
Okay, so if you all gather around, I will map your family tree. You are all of the same family, yes?
Yeah, him and I especially.
Especially, okay, lovely. And how are you related exactly?
First cousins, once removed. But our cousins were also our grandparents.
Okay, lovely. Well, we have the results
Very,
of
very
your
close
mouth
connection.
genes that will show exactly how related you are and how your family dynamic works. So let's just
So
get this
excited
chart
to
up.
hear brother cousin.
So, oh Christ! I mean, great news. You are actually related. Wonderful, congratulations! I think that was an unsure moment in your relationship right there. But as you can see,
we always knew,
It's the
just-
resemblance.
Just one of those things,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
okay.
Yeah, our beards, usually when I grow mine.
Oh, when you grow it up, I'm sure you look identical. But right here, you see the family mouth genes. It shows slight
Wait, your family
childhood
had mouths also?
trauma.
Of course they did. Oh, awesome. So yeah, we must be related. Sorry, what were you saying?
It's more the childhood trauma that I'm worried about. There's a theme here, as you can see, of childhood trauma, drug addiction, smoking. I mean, all of the genes in your mouths have gone absolutely batshit. They're multiplying like crazy.
Did somebody say batshit? So tasty. You're not meant to eat it, Clive. We're meant to study it.
Really?
For fuck's sake, Clive.
Do you want some more shit?
Clive,
Yes, sir.
why is he talking to us?
Don't you know? You're batshit crazy.
Oh, this is awkward.
Look, he likes some shit.
Just, it was some really good shit you gave me.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, come back for some of that microscope shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, we would, but, I mean, yeah, of course you're back for more. She wants more.
Yeah.
No, we can't do that. You're not supposed to put the microscope there.
What do you
supposed.
What do you need? What do you need? I'll give you whatever you want.
We could do with a new car, right?
Alright, I mean, like, I wouldn't.
Well, I mean, how badly do you want to know? I mean,
Do
there are
you
thousands.
do you want to allow us to experiment on your body?
Worst shout line ever.
I got $5 in a 2-day-old bologna sandwich.
I love the bologna sandwich.
All right, leave us the bologna sandwich.
All right, yeah.
You don't even want the $5.
For ride home.
It works in Canada, too.
Huh? Do you speak English?
Yes, I speak English.
Oh, great. Oh, thank God.
I have a slight speech impediment. That I have just been invented.
Oh, okay.
What?
Can you help me get home?
Okay, where did I go?
I want to go to Copenhagen, please.
Copenhagen? Why did I go to Copenhagen?
It's on the way home. I need to stop there to get some something. Yes.
Some bat shit?
Yeah.
You can't have bat shit.
Why?
Because bat shit did this. That's why I went to the dentist.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous. Super is something in my mouth.
Oh!
Yes! Yes, it's bat shit.
All right, it's performance review day. All right, who is gonna be our first? Yeah, let's bring in Steven's son. Yeah. All right.
Show off.
Now, tell us, how's things going over by the scab?
I am kicking ass.
The scab's supposed to be on his leg.
Oh, fuck.
Now, tell me, has it changed color at all by now?
It's like a greeny, kind of bluey, kind of yellowy thing going on.
That's good.
Na 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 na.
That's good, that's good. Now, tell me, where do you see yourself down the line, 5 years down the line in this job?
The toes.
The toes.
The toes.
This guy's looking far ahead. He's got goals.
I got gangrene.
All right.
I got the mange.
What? You got the what?
The mange. I just know whatever excites me anything, so I made it up.
Get in here. Get off. Go to those toes. You
Okay.
earned it, kid.
Okay, boss. I'm gonna get you, little piggy.
All right, I assign no age.
Oh, I'm not feeling so well. You're not. What did you eat?
Some soup, I think.
Some soup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just soup. Are you sure it was just soup? Was it watery soup?
It was very watery.
It was very
Watery and
yeah.
brown.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah.
Was it meat? Vegetables? Was it cooked
I
properly?
hope it had meat in it. It was
Right.
meaty.
It was meaty. Yeah. Did it smell good? Was it all right? Are you sure?
It smelled really good, actually.
Did it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I smelled it, and it was
Yeah.
reminded me of.
Well, I've got some pills. You know, do you want to just get some pills in
Yeah.
for yourself? Yeah.
Is it sort of like? Is it that good stuff? The stuff that kills all the bacteria.
Well, it's supposed to. Yeah, that's what it says. Yes. I mean, I just got it from the corner shop. You know.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. You
It's
said
about to be
you
fine.
promised me that would be all right. Yeah,
Okay, right.
Good.
Good.
Thank you. Have some water. Go on. Down it all. Oh, you will be fine.
I feel better already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm sure all the bacteria in my gut are just dying off
Excellent.
right now.
Okay. So now you can.
Bacteria in his gut.
Yeah. I get really paranoid, Steve.
I'm having a time of my life. I don't know
I
what
mean,
you're
I'm just
talking
feeling
about.
like the liquids around us have changed. There's something in them.
No, you see, I've adapted. This is my new life. We're gonna fuck his tummy up. Guys, what's happening?
Okay, right. Antibodies, right. Come here. Thanks, yeah, come here, right. Right, these little fuckers, bacteria, then they can challenge us. We're gonna shoot the little fuckers in the face, aren't we?
Yeah, shoot right in the face.
What have we done? What have we done?
What have you done?
Yeah.
You want change. We don't like change.
No, we don't know.
Come on, we're just protecting you. That's all we're doing.
You
We
never.
fear change.
What?
We fear change.
We fear change. We're old. Yes, we're old people.
Freeze! This has nothing to do with Brexit or anything else.
We're really old, we don't like you.
Oh, that's what you say, is you
Yeah.
just don't like. You just don't like the strangers.
No, you come into our body and just fuck it up.
Fuck it up.
This
You
has
fuck
nothing
up.
to do with Trump.
I mean, we're really great at fucking things up. We fuck things up the best.
You know, we should attach ourselves.
Maybe it does.
Let's attach ourselves from the outside world. Maybe like a...
Let's build like
A big
wall
wall.
of
Come on,
steel.
this is modern society. Modern society.
Oh,
We
fuck
got
off.
everything. Got everything. You know, there's so much of diversity here. We can enjoy each other's company. You know, and I will protect you.
Hey man, got any jobs going?
Oh yes. Have you met my mate, Clive?
Where's he
This is
from?
Clive.
Where's he from?
Who knows where it's from, man?
Oh, but he has got a lot of magic.
Oh, magic.
Yeah. You like magic. Alright. Well, you're a magic,
No, we like magic.
Yeah, we like magic.
Sounds a bit funky, but we'll let it in.
A little bit funky.
We'll let it in for 3 months, see what we like. If we don't like it, you can go back out.
Guys, I made it to the other side. You just gotta red rover the wall.
Son of a bitch.
You just gotta red rover them. We're doing great over here.
Can't believe we're the only ones in his mouth. It's crazy. I know.
Oh, do you want to play boxing again?
Boxing?
Yeah, go on, do boxing.
Okay.
What? He hates that, he gags all the time.
We make him gag again.
Yeah, okay.
Should we jump up and down on his tongue like kangaroos?
Yes, let's.
I'm lonely.
Oh, how are you lonely? You've got me.
But maybe we could mold, blend. Maybe we could just join but then separate again into two different ones like this.
Are you a scientist?
I've got your genes now.
I can't do your genes, you're too tall for me.
I'm slightly blind.
Who said that?
What? These really fuck your eyes, don't they?
So I'd like to take out a loan. I mean, it's just for science.
Okay, it says here you have no credit.
But I have this great vision that I was steaming my fabrics one day and I thought, what if when you scraped anything, there were like thousands of hundreds of tiny little men on everything that just manipulated you from the inside out.
It sounds like a whole lot of bullshit, but I'm going to check if we have any
But I mean, it
dream
could mean
grants
the end of
that-
humanity. I mean, these things could kill you from the inside. They eat your mouth and your vaginal organs and like your feet.
Yeah, no, that all sounds real. It
The
does sound.
apocalypse is coming!
We do have a
I
dream
need this
grant.
loan.
We have a dream grant.
You have a dream grant?
We do. Now there's one condition. Okay.
Okay, what? Lay it on me.
We require to take your hand.
Like just clean off my whole hand, or
Searching 1 second. Yeah, the whole thing. The whole thing.
I mean, what if the dream grant requires both usage of both hands? I mean, would you take like 2 feet?
It says you'll be given a hook.
Ah, Collinstein, you arrived. Good job.
Ah, yeah, well,
Yes,
I thought I'd arrive here.
Where have you been?
Well, I've just been sort of pissing about, really.
Oh, good travels.
Well, I went a bit all over the place, really. I went to Spain, I went to China, I went to Philadelphia, and I went...
Enough of this!
I went to Guam.
We have a problem.
Am I getting fired?
No. We need you to go back up.
I can't go back up there.
We need you back up there.
No, I've been enjoying Guam.
You're the best goddamn thing, the word I can't remember. No, the other one. Anti-germ thing.
I think it's
Antibacteria!
antibiotic.
That's the one!
You're getting, in my old age, I remember the old times.
God damn it, Cornerstein! Help us!
What am I going to get for helping you?
You can save the life of the man or woman. Non-sexist.
Fortune.
Helpfulness. Words. Can't remember any of them. Who are you? What's going on?
I'll do it.
What?
I'll do it.
Do you need help?
Yes.
You need your crack team?
I need my crack team.
Oh, no,
Of crack.
Of crack. But no, that's not
No, I was joking. I was joking. I did a joke.
That's very
I did a joke.
Very funny.
I know, I made it up. It was a joke. It was funny. It was a funny joke.
I didn't hear any laughter. It was fun. No, it was fun.
I learned it in Guam.
I really need... Do you mind if I go in front of you? I need to see the pharmacist.
Why? I want to be in front.
Oh,
My problem is bigger than your problem.
What do you got?
I've got a cold.
Oh, how are you handling it?
I'm coughing up blood.
Oh, wow. No, that sounds really bad. You see, the thing about me is it feels like there's two strange jumping men inside who are pummeling my tonsils.
No, I
haven't.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
That's really weird.
No, I'm sorry.
Have you had someone actually look in your mouth and like put maybe a microscope down there to check?
The doctor told me that I need to come to take some experimental medication. I need to get it from the pharmacist. If you really want to go in front, you can, but I'm just telling you, I feel like it's over any minute.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh.
Hi there.
Oh, it's you.
Yeah, Dr. Logan Berryclaw. he said there's little funny men in my throat and they're punching my tonsils. Do you have the drugs for that? Oh,
You don't
here's the prescription.
remember me.
Oh,
I'm just a pharmacist to you.
no, I mean, we had those good times last time when you pointed out the Vagisil for my wife. Oh my god. Debbie!
Dearest Papa, we are writing to you from your travels inside the human body.
Pretty fun.
We miss you loads. You haven't been around to do fun things with us.
Like rolling around each other.
Like rolling around each other. We wish you were here.
Inside us. Inside with us.
Inside with us. We are just a distant memory to you now. You have gone on a journey of genes and microbiomes.
We're sad
We feel so lonely
and poor
and neglected.
and need food.
Like all of us.
We're dying.
Actual.
Look at us dying.
Oh man, I just got this letter from my daughter, and it's so whiny. It's like they just want food and care and attention. They just need to spread their genetic material around, right?
Don't they know how to do that yet?
No, I don't know. These kids today, right?
They are going to school, right?
Well,
They are going to school. They are learning something, right?
In some germ school.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I had to push them away. I had to just actually physically just expel them out in a car. And they finally got the message. But now they're just writing these whiny letters at me.
No, I've got kids. I've got hundreds of kids, to be honest, And oh, yes, I treat them with great discipline. And I've taught them to multiply.
Really?
Of course.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I think all kids are their own now.
Well, they will be very, very soon. Very soon.
Inside germ school.
Oh, right, so I'm teaching. Right, basically, we need to germify. That's a word. I made it up, I'm a teacher, I'm right. Write it down, germify. G, germify.
G with a J.
G with a J.
G with a J.
And how do genes get shared? Because I heard that like one
Genes
germ
get shit. What happens?
bangs against
Listen,
another germ,
child!
and they rub off all the
No,
genes.
no, they don't. A giant bird gene flies around and drops a little bird gene.
Sir?
Yes!
Is that the Levi bird?
Shut up, Perkins. Any other questions? You're going to die a horrible death of tartar blackness, like your soul.
Stanley, these are new recruits?
I fucking hope not.
Any of them showing any potential?
We're on a field trip.
Woo, field. What's this kid do?
He writes germs with a J.
Writes germs with a J.
He knows all about your Levi birds.
He can attack the brain.
That's quite dark.
Oh my god, I get it.
You've gone around China. I would really like, I would really like to go to Indonesia as well.
God, that sounds awesome!
So, I don't want to return back to Europe just
No, you're right. We need to travel the world. Who cares about this whatever we've done and China and
it'll
Canton
be
and...
fine, it'll be fine,
It'll be fine.
We're running out of money, but perhaps we can just get a part-time job a little bit,
Yeah,
or just do things,
And
we'll
the
work in the
children
nightclub
lost-
as we're
yeah.
going around.
It'll be awesome.
Should be good, it should be good.
Yeah.
Okay, but we do have the antibiotics.
I tried to take them all on.
What happened?
The fucking bacteria fought back.
No! Hello, Toes.
Oh god.
Oh no.
Yeah, they're my name.
They've been...
Where's the other three?
Oh, there.
Oh, yes, trust you to be the big toe. Gangrene. Gangrene.
Oh no, he's coming.
No, I'm going to leave you. And
Oh!
my work here is done from both of us. Thank
And
you.
that's our show. Thank you very much.